So I have progressed on to step 31, where we're building the pod for the center of the eagle. And just a couple things, and I really have not whined much about this kit, and I really shouldn't, but in this case it's not. The issues I have are about the organization of the kit itself. So I'm going to put a picture up here of the step I'm on. Okay, step 31. I'd circled that piece, number C32, which is this piece right here. And I'm going to take my phone off of the stand here for a moment. So I apologize for it to be a little uncomfortable. I want to show you something. These are the kit parts that I have. And if we slide up here to the sprues that I've tossed to the side, right? And then, you know, there's the pieces that are done. We take a look through the sprue again. We take a look at that. It's not there. That is yet another part that was not in this kit. So I am now up to 6, I think, parts that were not included in this kit. And I assume it is because this model of the Laboratory Eagle is simply a add sprues for the laboratory part and take away sprues that you don't need. So like these two, right? Now, in addition to those, what I do have is another bag of these, which is the essentially the cages, or the side cages, for the access ways at the front and back. So it's a little bit frustrating. Wine over this. Fortunately, that is a flat, unadorned, plain piece. So with a piece of 3mm styrene, I will go ahead and I will be able to fix that, because it just goes right there. Easy peasy. It's just annoying. The other thing that I'm looking at, and this is something where I need to do a little bit of research, and this is the one other piece about this kit that I've noticed, and it's, I really shouldn't complain, because I've been doing sci-fi models for years, and this is traditional for sci-fi models, and this is kind of what I get for bouncing back and forth between sci-fi kits and things like armor or aircraft, is fit. So for an armor kit, this would be absolutely unacceptable. For a sci-fi kit, it's just fine. So sci-fi kits have this kind of fit. A lot of these big gaps in places that simply need work. Won't be hard. I actually need to take a look at the original to see if those even show, because those might actually be seen as panel lines, but I'm guessing they won't. Again, that's just a little bit of filler. Now this is actually the worst, right? So if I look at, if we take a look at on the side pods, these go together really well, and you can see very little bit of seam area here, like things I've got to fill. There's definitely sanding and so forth and cleanup you have to do, but considering how this all goes together, they actually fit very well. So there's just a little bit of cleanup to do on most of the kits, and actually this is the one where it was the most evident, was on the landing bay pods, and on the landing gear. So basically for the landing gear pieces is where, you know, your seam work really needed a lot of effort. Other than that, though, I think it's really nice. So I will continue on with my little rant done. I'll go ahead and I'll make the part for this, and then I will move on to number 32. So I actually saved off this, and it's pretty straightforward. It's just a sheet of 3mm styrene, and I just get the basic dimensions measured out first. And I've got a bunch of these sheets floating around in my workshop, and that's really all it is. You cut it to shape, put it in place. I'm a little paranoid sometimes about how length goes, so when I put this on, I get it in place, then I trim it back. I locate where it is I need to go to trim it back. It's pretty straightforward. You just cut it. If you ever work with sheet styrene, especially with thick stuff, you just score it for a bit and then it just snaps. Next thing you do once you get it in place, right, you get that located, but then you see those little divots. That's where screws are going to go. That's what holds this whole thing onto the plate. Now I start putting a mark on the plate, and then I realize that might not necessarily align. So I change my mind. Once I get to about here, I'm like, I'm going to mark it actually on the pod, so that once I put the plate in place and it's in, I can just measure from there. So I get this in, drop it in, trust handy dandy, Tammy extra thin, find it, get it locked in. Doesn't take long. Put it on the ends and to the side. There's a little bit of a gap that'll get filled. It's pretty straightforward. But once I've got that in place, now the marks I just made, now I know where they are aligned according to the actual, where those divots really align on the piece itself inside. So now I just go ahead and make my marks and grab hold of my handy dandy variable speed Dremel, and it goes actually slow, so I can actually drill holes out without melting the plastic. With that much done, it's time to move on to step 32. And again, this one's a little bit fiddly, but it's not terrible. The putting these together, the nice thing is the two rods that hold things together are they fit in tight, so they actually hold orientation fairly well. The trick is some of this cleanup. Again, I talk about cleanup the whole way through this entire series about this kit, but it's kind of important with the way these pieces go together that your edges are cut. They're at something of an angle, and so you need to make sure they're shaped right. The nice thing about these pieces is they are fit so that they can't go in wrong. They're also tight. These haven't been pre-painted, and they fit very snugly. So the nice thing about that is that they will, when you put them in, actually hold orientation fairly stiffly. I mean, if this was loose, it'd be flopping all over the place. I actually had to put some effort in to squeeze them in, and that allows us to actually kind of hold a nice orientation while you put the side pieces on. Once again, cleaning up the side pieces, because you can see the angle of where that joint's going to be. See how they're angled in a bit? That needs to be just so. The nice thing is they do fit fairly well, but again, fiddly. I go through here, and now I'm using Tamiya extra thin quickset, which something I had just found. I didn't even know this stuff existed. It's really cool. And you can see, like, as I just touch, that kind of falls apart, and then I go to pick it up, this falls apart. I start getting a little frustrated, and then I realize, what I really need to do is get this end cap on. So go get the door piece, which is right there, cut it off, and drop it on. Again, now there's a little bit of a fit issue here. We're going to see in a moment. Even though I sand these down right, there's a little bit of a fit issue right there at this is the upper left, or the left-hand side of this. But basically what it is, I put these in, go to the corners, which then let all of this stuff sort of fit in, or sort of connect in, and then just work my way around. I start at the corners of each of the corners of the door piece, and then work my way down the edges. That gets me where I want to go. This is where I switched it to Tamiya extra thin, because I find that actually grabs it faster. There are little tiny gaps that happen in the upper part of the door, and they're an artifact of the way
the inner pieces joined together. But other than that, the majority of these seams fit very well. There, you can see that gap right there, just above that curve. And no matter how much I squeeze it, it just doesn't quite go away. The other piece that's on here, this is the end cap that just goes right there. It fits in very easily. There isn't even work to do on seam lines. It's just because of the way that's put together, those are all hidden. So that actually works really nice. Overall, this goes together fairly well, and it's a quick and easy piece to put together. Again, you'll note I didn't put the thrusters on. Now, this is where I'm looking at that fitment. And this goes in at a little bit of an angle, and that corner right there on that piece, that's what keeps it from fitting snugly. So all I did on the second side is I just snipped that to an angle off of the top piece and then off of the door. That's the only real modification I did, and I found that actually made things go a little bit better. It was a little bit smoother. Again, really, if you want to go ahead and fill that like 1 mil gap, there you can see how that just kind of, now no matter what, I can put that in at the angle the door goes in, and it fits. And that's it. That then makes this pod ready to go together. You clip them on. Now, if you look down at the bottom of the pod, this is where I find another interesting thing. There's this gap. It almost looks like it was designed wrong. I thought about filling it. Nah, I just went with it because it's all solid. It doesn't look like there's a hole that goes inside. It's not really going to be seen, so I went with that. With that finished, it was time to do the bottom pieces. So there's the little landing gear things that need to go there. Once again, seam lines. They were big enough that I just went ahead and bondoed the bottom and sanded them down. It's not something you're really going to see, but they are up in the air. You might see them. So I just sanded them down. It really doesn't take much effort. Pretty straightforward. Hit them with metallic paint. I do go back with a little bit of the metal stuff later, but this gives me what I needed, and that pretty much finishes that.
Okay, now just going over it. This is the stuff I'm using for the bells and all the metal. I'm not doing. I haven't figured out how to work my airbrush to use like the Alclads, and I'm not going to get the turned aluminum. So I wanted to try this stuff. This is actually going to look as nice as I'm really craving, but this is actually pretty neat. So you put a layer of this stuff down by brush, then you take something soft and then you polish it. And essentially I found it easier to polish this way. And you can use a cloth, you can use a paper towel. I found this stuff to be the best, and it actually gives a nice, that's what it looks like dull, and that's how it comes up. That's the metalish look that you get when you polish this up. And the better you polish it, the better it looks. So it's kind of like doing wax on a car. And I'm actually really happy with how this looks. So let me get this one done up here real quick and we'll take a look at it. I have to reglue that. But so that's how these come out looking after you give them a quick polish, and that'll work for me. Like I said, I don't have to have them looking like the aluminum bells from the show, because that's, again, not quite the aesthetic I need to have, and it's not really worth the effort to, or the expense really, to make that happen. So I'll fix that, and then that bell's done, and then I'll go do all the rest of them, all the rest of them. So that's how I'm doing the aluminum on these. So, all right, and moving on.
And that's just a quick side-by-side comparison of how they look. So that's what I end up with at the end of this step. With that, we are at the end of our episode. We have a nice big bin of pieces that are put together. Now it's time to put on the transfers and start the weathering, which will be the next episode. We'll deal with all that. For now, I hope this was entertaining, useful, or at least, some kind of fun to watch. Please feel free to leave comments down below if they're constructive, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you very much, and happy modeling.